Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Wow, guys, isn't the weather crazy lately? For the last couple of days in upstate New York, when the weather around this time is 40s, we've had 70-degree days. And usually we have some tail-ending snowstorms. All day today we've had thunder and lightning storms. This is completely nuts. Anyway, I thought I'd just share that with you guys because I'm sure you guys are having some crazy weather where you are as well. But what else is crazy is these encounters that I'm going to share with you today. Before we get into those, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version, written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They're available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. Also, links are in the description as well. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. In the summer, I work at a camp in Janesville, Wisconsin. The cabins that the staff sleep in have screen windows and screen doors, meaning you can hear everything going on outside of the cabins. I'd left my cabin at around 11 p.m. to go take a shower with one of my bunkmates. We got back to our cabin at around 12:30. She crawled into her bed and fell asleep, but my ADHD kept me up, so I put my earbuds in on low volume so I would not wake her. At around 1 in the morning, I thought I heard a fox scream or coyotes in the distance. Me being a nature lover, I wanted to hear it. So I got up and stood by the door. I love listening to the coyotes and fox in the distance. I soon went back to my bed, but around 1:30, I heard this human-like high-pitched screaming that continued for no more than 15 seconds before turning into a deep growl mixed with a screech. This went on for about 30 seconds, all in one continuous breath, not spaced out at all like a fox or a coyote. I know distance when it comes to sounds, especially, and it couldn't have been more than 30 feet from the cabins. Now, when I tell you this sent shivers down my spine and woke me up like I had just drank 12 cups of coffee, I was freaked out. I sat straight in my bed expecting to see something at my door staring at me, but nothing. Then this loud thumping like horse galloping, running on what sounded like 2 legs instead of 4, running quickly the other direction away from the cabins. I got up and bolted the door so quickly, even though the screen doors and windows and a bolt wouldn't have done much, but it still made me feel safer. I thought I was going nuts until my friend in the cabin next to me whispered, "Hey, did you hear that too?" As the cabins are quite close together, with a panic in his voice. That's how I know I wasn't dreaming. I don't know if anyone else heard it, as a lot of the guys are heavy sleepers and my bunkie slept with earplugs in. I've been trying to figure out exactly what it was for the rest of that summer. But because of poison ivy running rampant, myself nor anyone else could check for footprints in the area the noise had come from. I was going to set up trail cams in the area where the noise had come from, but the summer of 2020 camp didn't run because of attendee numbers, so I was unable to get there last year. This all happened in the summer of 2019. For the past 5 years, I've worked there. We have found a lot of absolutely shredded deer carcass, turkey, and other smaller animals. I've been trying to figure out what the hell I heard that night, because it's haunted me now for a while, and because there is no way any animal I know has ever made sounds like that. Today's second part of the upload. My dad used to haul stuff around the woods of northwest Ohio. He always tells me stories about the weird things he's seen. One night he was driving, going about 65 miles an hour, when a gray-colored thing ran past his truck. So that means it was going over 65. And he says it was some kind of animal. I asked if it was a cougar. No, he says it was not cat-like, rather wolf or dog-like. Leave it at that, and it's still creepy, an oversized wolf running that fast. Sorry, I don't know how fast they can run, but I believe that's usually faster than normal. But it only gets creepier from there. He says he definitely remembers it running on 2 legs. What the hell kind of animal looks like a wolf, runs on 2 legs, and runs faster than 65 miles an hour? He says he was tired when it happened, but it's still very creepy, and he probably tells himself that so he doesn't scare himself. All I know is I still wonder what kind of thing it could have been there, and what's out there. Today's third encounter. This takes place in Washington, a place that seems to be the biggest hotspot in the United States for Sasquatch and other creepy cryptid sightings. This was also near a lot of mountains, so that may add a slight bit more credibility. But anyway, in the 1970s, probably 1973, my dad went to a 6th grade camp at a camp called Camp Timberlake, now called Camp Arnold. He was in middle school and this camp was new. It could have been the opening year of it. He says some things didn't seem fully built, so he went for a couple of days, doing what you'd normally do at a 6th grade camp. Then, during one of the nights, he heard what sounded like a loud walking and rustling in the uncleared forest behind his cabin. Nothing really notable happened, but the counselor for his group said to stay quiet. Then something really weird happened. The entire camp was completely ended the next day, day 1 early. No one ever really explained why, but the next day when they were leaving, his teacher pointed out a huge footprint on the side of the trail. I don't know if others saw it, though, because it was just him, maybe one other student, and the teacher walking back after everyone else. Today's fourth part of the upload. This happened around 2013 in northeastern Ohio. I will add we also have an active Bigfoot hunting group who frequents the state park where this took place. My grandmother, high school boyfriend, and I, 24, were headed to the park one day to go horseback riding on the trails when this happened. I was around 17 at the time. We had just pulled onto the entrance road to the parking area when I watched something walk across the black pavement road that headed back to the camping area. This road is probably 10-15 feet across, just enough for a truck and trailer to fit. I watched whatever this creature was cross the road, stop momentarily in the middle to glance at us, and then continue to walk. It probably took 1, maybe 2 steps for the creature to cross. I was the only one who completely saw this, as my boyfriend at the time noticed right as the creature hit the tall grass on the other side, heading toward the power lines. From where I was, the creature was about 400 yards away, so it was difficult for me to make out any specific features. I just know it was large, it was walking on 2 legs, and it was not a person. I was understandably a little freaked out, but we continued to unload our horses and saddle them up. We decided to start by walking the horses down the black pavement road to the gravel road, as this was the best way to get to the certain trail. At the exact point where I saw the creature walk, our horses became noticeably agitated. My horse, especially, who can frighten easily, began to fight me to pass the stretch of pavement. I could tell something was causing her not wanting to continue, and to run back to the trailer, which is not normal for her. Even as I got her past that spot, she continued to walk sideways, as if to make sure she could see what was behind her. All I can assume is that she smelled or sensed something in the area that was frightening her, and she wanted to bolt. I can't say for sure what I saw, but it's a memory that has stuck with me for a long time. Today's fifth part of the upload. Last October, me and a friend were out on a backpacking trip in Washington State. We left Friday after work and ended up arriving at the trailhead right at dusk. The campsite we were staying at was about 5 miles in, so we hiked for the next few hours with our headlamps as well as my friend's Australian collie dog. When we arrived, it was about 9 p.m., and we were expecting to probably see another group or two of the campers already set up at the campsite, but looked around and we were the only ones there. So we set up our tents, cracked open a couple beers we had brought, and were chatting in the darkness. 20 minutes go by, and then to our left we hear this sound, which, the only way I can describe it, was a howling, gibberish yelling, maybe a couple of 100 feet away from us. It lasted 6 to 7 seconds. Shining our headlamps in the direction, we didn't see anything. We were both in agreement that it was definitely not a coyote or any other animal sound that we had heard before. It's also worth noting there is a creek a few 100 feet in the opposite direction of the howling, which gave off a slight murmur that did muffle the howling a bit. We waited another 15 minutes, both shrugged it off, and went to bed without mentioning anything of it possibly being a cryptid. The rest of the night was uneventful, and we woke up to a sunny morning ready to get hiking. Over the next 2 days, we talked quite a bit about that incident. We had thought it could have been another group of hikers in the area, but looking at the map, there are no other trails or roads in that direction. My wife thinks that it may have been another group of campers trying to spook us, but why would they do that? We were 5 miles from the nearest road. It was late in the evening, and no one else was near us. No other lights, sounds, etc. It doesn't make any sense someone would be hiding further up the mountain just to give us a scare. Could it have been another animal? Possibly, but the sound was very unnerving, and was almost like the mix of howling along with some gibberish words that were being spoken or communicated, which led us to think that it could not have been a coyote or a bear. We also thought it sounded like there may have been more than one that was making the sound, and they were yelling at each other. It was close enough to us that it sounded fairly loud, but just far enough out of range of our headlamps. Lastly, when we looked at the map, the only thing in that direction was a skullcap peak. Definitely a creepy name to go along with the whole incident. We later found out that skullcap is actually a type of mint plant. Really wish there was more to the story, but we completed our weekend backpacking trip without any other weird occurrences. I also must note that I've done quite a bit of hiking and backpacking in Washington, and this was the first time I have ever experienced anything like this. Today's sixth encounter. Went on a hike at Hunter Trail in Mission, British Columbia, and on our way down at 1800, we had objects thrown at us from the sides. No wind or overcast, no bad smells, just very, very creepy. A few times it even sounded like something was moving as we moved and stopped as we stopped. We experienced something 4 times, and the first time we put it off as an animal taking off from us. Like we took a step, and then we heard a very loud and extremely close sound of something moving away, but nothing else to indicate something was still moving away from us. It did not sound small. We all froze and looked around and listened. The second time it was definitely something thrown because as we turned around to look, the tree branch at least 10 feet up in the air was shaking. There was no sign or sounds of anything flying away off of the branch or running away, just the sound of something hitting the branch, which was at least 1 inch in diameter at the start and around 3.5 feet long, about 1/2 inch at the end, and then a thud. If there was a bird on it, it would have had to have been a very big bird, maybe even an owl. but there were no signs of anything flying away, no bird or any sounds of flapping. And again, it was right beside us, so I believe we should have heard more noises associated with whatever was moving away. The third time, it seemed like a much bigger object. I think it was a rock again. And there were also branches clearly moving, as if something had hit or touched it. Each time we felt very uneasy and were startled. We had a powerful flashlight and saw nothing. The fourth time, it definitely was a rock that was thrown at us, because we clearly made out the sound of rock on rock. And just prior to that, one of my friends heard what he said sounded like 2 wood knocks. My other friend and I did not hear that, so I can't confirm this. I don't feel comfortable doing this hike at this time anymore. We did feel like we were being stalked, maybe by a mountain lion. But to me, that sounds and the trees moving, at least those 3 times, they just didn't add up. Think of a diver jumping off a diving board. Once they jump, the board still moves up and down and slowly stops. That's what these branches did. So yes, it can be a bird, but the branches, being as thick as they were, it really would have had to have been a big bird. Therefore, I think we would have at least seen it or heard it fly away. We don't know what to think of it, or at least I don't. They are convinced it was a bird or an animal. One of them even suggested it was someone else. But if you are familiar with this place, you know it's impossible for someone to keep up with you while off the trail, and to do this, it's either an incline on one side. Today's final encounter. Being from Washington State myself, I felt it only fitting to share a Bigfoot story that takes place close to home. In this incident, we have some hunters out in the woods who hear vocalization and have a visitor that night at their camp. Let's take a brief look at the story and see what we make of it. The story takes place near Mount St. Helens in Washington, a world-renowned Sasquatch hotspot. The location specifically was on the Norway Pass, and the weather conditions were cold, rainy, and overcast, typical Washington weather. The day was like any other on their 3-day camping trip, nothing special to report until that night, when they were splitting wood for their campfire. As one of the hunters was splitting wood, they heard the faint clacking of wooden objects together in the distance. In response, the hunters took a piece of wood from the fire and struck it on a tree near them once. A minute or two of silence followed before another wood knock was reported. Then nothing. After a few minutes of silence, the hunters returned to their normal business, thinking nothing further of it, and turned in for the night. Sometime during the night, the hunters were awakened by the sound of something slapping up against the side of their tent. They described it as being like a branch or a broom thrown against their tent. The hunters got up, examined the area around their tent, and didn't find anything. No branches, nothing. The forest around them grew silent, and eventually the hunters returned to bed. No sooner had they fallen asleep when they were awakened again, this time by the sound of a terrifying guttural roar just outside of their tent. They described the roar as being as loud as a train blasting you with its horn at point-blank range. This time the hunters decided to ride out the rest of the night in the tent awake, but nothing else occurred. The next morning the men exited the tent and looked for signs of what might have done it. However, they were unable to find any signs of life near their tent. They packed up and headed home. Mount St. Helens has had a history of aggressive Sasquatch encounters. This lends an extra layer of credibility to their story. The fact that they tell us exactly what happened without embellishing or adding details no one would think of also adds a credibility to their story. These men are hunters. They know the area that they are in. They hunt it all the time. They know what lives in these mountains. If this had been a bear or something along those lines, these guys would have been able to identify it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Yeah, some really crazy weather going on today, man. Holy cow. Anyway, I may or may not do a historical Dogman Sasquatch in the early newspaper tonight. I've got about another couple of days worth of old news clippings to do. So maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, I'm really not sure. I've got some really amazing encounters that are from my neck of the woods. Again, I reached out and talked to some people that I didn't know. I just reached out to, there's a couple places up here that support Sasquatch and Dogman activity. And I got some really neat encounters from them to share with you guys. So that may be possibly tomorrow. More than likely tomorrow. Anyway, I'm not really sure. I hope you guys have a great day. And yes, my throat is back to being scratchy again. I don't know what the heck is going on. Like, I don't have a temperature. I was getting the hot and cold flashes last night, but my throat, it was scratchy last night too. It's just really weird. I feel great for a couple days and then feel like shit again. Who knows? Anyway, have a great day, guys, and please, please, stay safe, everyone. See ya!